FGDLA's Government Learning and Technology Symposium Series. I'm Carla Lane, FGDLA's Vice President of the Higher Education Sector and the moderator for today's workshop, alongside Rob Porter, FGDLA's board member, and Russ Colbert, who is FGDLA's Vice President of the Corporate Sector. FGDLA is a nonprofit professional association formed to promote the development, the application of distance learning to the federal government. We foster collaboration and understanding among those who leverage technology and instructional media to support the federal government's education and our training needs. Our membership is derived primarily from individuals employed by the agencies within the federal government. We invite you to join with us in this exciting field. You'll find membership forms at fgdla.us. Okay, Rob, you want to put up the slide with the new events on it? The next slide, please. There you are. All right, here are the upcoming events for FGDLA. On February 19th, Dr. Anders Gronstedt will present the second part of today's workshop on instructional design and production for virtual reality. On March 19th, we'll hold the FGDLA annual meeting. And on April 16th, Dr. Zach Rochelle will address using direct explicit instruction for instructional design. On May 21st, COSO Cloud's Rob Porter will present a VA case study. We hope you'll join us for these unique online events. If you have suggestions for future webinars, let me know, Dr. Carla Lane at AOL.com. We are so proud that Moodle and COSO Cloud and Learn to Win have become valued sponsors for FGDLA. They are instrumental in helping us present the webinars and so much more. We're honored to have wonderful sponsors who are giants in the industry. Thank you. We think you are the best. We also want to recognize Adobe for their very generous support of FGDLA. They've helped us in so many ways, and we thank them for their work to support FGDLA's training and education mission. Today, the workshop is powered by Adobe Connect for the very first time. As you can see, it's a unique and an interactive platform that helps us structure, flow, and focus the content. We're so happy about this and join the many other federal agencies and organizations that use Adobe Connect because of its exceptional audience engagement, its presenter productivity, as well as the measurable impact for virtual training and education. Russ, you want to add something to that?
Carla, you're a hard act to follow, so not much to add, except I love the music that was in the lobby there when we first began the broadcast. And I thank the sponsors as well. They're amazing sponsors. I thank the generous support from Adobe, and our platform today is Adobe Connect, powered by Adobe Connect. And thank you to the sponsors, and thank you to Carla for your incredible support for our participants and our organization.
Thanks, Russ. It's always such a pleasure to work with you. Thank you. And we'll be talking back and forth today as Anders and his panelists are speaking. Today's webinar is led by Dr. Anders Gronstedt. He is the president of the Gronstedt Group. Anders is a leader in XR innovation. He is joined by a stellar panel of industry leaders who will share their unique perspectives on VR. Each has worked with the Gronstedt Group to bring cutting-edge XR solutions to the workplace. The panelists include Brian Kesselmeyer, who led VR training development for cell therapy at Bristol Myers Squibb. They created simulations for clean room technicians using real-time rendered virtual environments. At the International Finishing Trades Institute, Dr. Thomas Funstad spearheaded an innovative VR recruitment and training program for the construction trades. And at Dakin Applied Americas, Brian Dewhurst led the hyper-realistic life-size 3D versions of Dakin's industrial equipment in VR that created the ultimate customer experience. In this two-part workshop, Anders will present actionable strategies, authentic examples, and expert insights to help you leverage VR to enhance your organization's training programs. Anders, welcome back. You have drawn a remarkably large crowd for us. We appreciate that. The mailing list you've got is something else. So We want to welcome you and Brian, Thomas, and Brian to share their expertise with us. So, Andrew, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you so much, Carla and team. I'm thrilled to be back. Some of you might have joined the webinar we gave this summer, and now we're back for a more in-depth look at virtual reality training. So this first section is a 2-hour-long session where we'll talk about the more high-level strategic role of VR in the training mix. And then, of course, next month we'll have a session where we go into more of the technical side of how to develop VR. But that's not to say that we can't, of course, bring up questions on that. Yeah, Rob, would you mind pulling up the PowerPoint? Oops. Yeah. So we have a great panel here of our clients, and they are going to appear here on there we go at the bottom of the hour here. Brian will talk about the Bristol Myers Squibb case, and then Brian Kesselmeyer, that is, and Brian Dewhurst within next hour here we'll talk about the Daikin case, and Thomas Funstein after that will talk about his case. And they all of them represent different use cases of VR in Bristol Myers Squibb case. It's very technical training for clean room applications. Brian Dewhurst at Daikin is going to talk about using it for more marketing and sales purpose in addition to training, and also talk quite a bit about cross-platform development and how the same program that's developed for the VR headset can also be played on a phone or a tablet. And Thomas Funstein is going to look at an interesting aspect of VR, which is recruitment and how they're bringing it to recruitment fairs to bring people into the finishing trades to be painters. So I know this is obviously a federal focused audience, and I'm going to be presenting a Navy case here initially. So we're going to have a mix here of government and enterprise case studies, and I think the audience here is mixed as well. So that's going to be something for everyone, and I think there's a lot for the government and enterprise section, enterprise companies to learn from each other. So with that said, and just a little bit about myself here and my firm, we're based in Colorado. I'm born and raised in Colorado, and in my spare time, I practice my Swedish accent at Thirtaltrea. So we custom develop programs, and all the programs you see here are developed by my talented team. So before we launch in here, we'd like to get to know you a little bit and hear from you. First of all, I have a couple of questions here. How many of you have experienced modern VR? Yes or no? I'm talking as opposed to modern, as opposed to the early generation of cardboard VR and stuff and just watching a video in a VR headset, but actually interacting in a VR headset. And I see that it splits at about 80% have and 20% haven't. So for those 20%, if you don't take away anything else from this, I hope you get it will inspire you to go out and get a headset. You know, they're $300, $500 for the Meta Quest, which is really the right now the market leader. You can buy them anywhere, Amazon, Best Buy, or directly from Meta. And that's not a quote, that's not working for them, but VR really has to be experienced, and even just playing games in VR headset will have you get a better appreciation for it. But we'll show a lot of videos of what it looks like, and I think you'll be able to imagine it well anyway. So the next question we have here is how many of you are using VR in your organization or client organization if you're on the agency side? And that's about split even. Okay, good to know. A little 56% of you are not using it. So hopefully this will inspire you to start using it in your organization. We would love to use chat here during the 2 hours. So if you would mind typing in chat, those of you that are doing it, what you're doing with it. We'd love to hear if you just write a few words about the kind of programs you're doing, and we can all read about it. Let's see if I have chat.
J. Allen, remote surgery.
Okay.
Toward using.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Mike Berry, skilled trades. People with disabilities. They're coming fast. Anders,
Yeah,
really
right.
great
Yeah.
utilization,
Okay. Risk
simulation.
assessment. Okay, cool. Yeah. Well, that's great to hear. Love to have you throughout the presentation here and workshop share more of your experiences. So given the great turnout for this session, we were initially planning on this to be a little more interactive, where you bring your own cases and we'll talk about them. But the way we're going to structure this is it's going to be case study driven. So I'm going to present this Navy case here shortly. We have the other case studies, and in the process, you'll get to ask all your questions here. And I think that's the best way to get an appreciation for VR. Before launching into that, though, let me give a short little analogy that I like to use about the value of VR training. So take yourself back some 12 years or so to the miracle of on the Hudson. You all remember that. You probably saw the Tom Hanks movie, right? Plane takes off from New York. Bird gets stuck in the engine. Within a couple of minutes, Captain Sullenberg craftfully lands the aircraft on the Hudson River, and no one is hurt. Well, it was called the miracle on the Hudson, but was it really a miracle, or was it really just the result of Captain Sullenberg or Sully? Going back into the flight simulator every 9 months, practicing this type of water landings over and over until it just becomes a reflex. And you can contrast that with the passengers that weren't quite as lucky. Because if you look at that iconic image, you'll notice that the one thing that you're supposed to bring in the rare event of a water landing, the life vest, only 33 out of 150 thought to even bring the life vest, and only 4 of them put them on properly. So after watching these safety videos, and we all have watched them over and over hundreds of times, barely anyone actually took note of it and actually learned how to use that knowledge in a real situation. And this is perhaps a good illustration of the value of actually learning by doing in this case in a high fidelity simulation. But of course the problem with this is a $20 million simulation, the flight simulators, and most of you don't have those kind of budgets. But now we can with virtual reality. So with a $500 headset, even there's $300 version now, we can do a lot of what you can do in a flight simulator. So I'm using the term flight sim here, of course, loosely and metaphorically, to mean that you can create a simulation for just about any procedural skill, where you put on the headset and you have this intense sensation of going to another place, of finding yourself in a pharma lab, for instance, which this image is depicting. And where you can accelerate your proficiency through hands-on practice with personalized feedback and unlimited do-over. You can practice things over and over, no need for a live instructor, and you're actually using your hands. So in the VR headset, for those of you that haven't had the experience, you're in the headset, you feel like you're transported to another place, and you're using your hands. You're actually holding these hand controllers. There are other ways to do it where you track the hands, but most VR programs at this stage of the technology uses these hand controllers. But in VR, you see your actual hands. So you forget that you're holding the controllers and you actually see your own hands. You start imagining that those are your real hands, and you can actually reach out and and practice things with your hand. And you can fail, and it's all a digital world, so you can just reset things and until you succeed. And this is spaced repetition. And I think that's a point that we're starting to hammer home more and more. The idea that in most of our training programs, we just bring people into a classroom, teach them once, and then expect them to know things. But if you think about any crafts, say a professional musician or an athlete, they don't just learn it once, they practice over and over, 10,000 times of actual focused and deliberate practice. And VR allows us to get that spaced repetition, and that repetition goes all the way up to the actual performance. Now, think back to those professional athletes and musicians. In spite of having practiced 10,000 times, they practice up until just minutes before they step out on the stage. When you go to a professional sports event, be it a baseball match, you see them practice throwing that ball. When you go to an ice hockey match, they're out there warming up just minutes before the match. Now, that's not just show. That's something they have to do to perform at their best. In fact, my son was an ice hockey goalie as a teenager, and he said if the players didn't gather around like you see in this image and give him shots right before the game, and he had an opportunity to adjust his eyes and get into focus, he would never be able to perform on the ice. And of course, musicians do the same thing with where they're tuned to the same A right before the concert is starting. Now, if you think this is just something that athletes and musicians do, there's a recent study that actually suggests that physicians, anesthesiologists, who in an experimental study, who did just-in-time training. Now, this wasn't VR, this was on a mannequin, but who just did intubation of infant mannequins just before they actually did the real intubation, performed better on this life-saving procedure. So these are physicians who've been doing this for 30 years. But yet, if they got to do that practice on that mannequin right before they do it in real life, they performed even better. That's a reference there. And actually, all of these slides you can download and get to read afterwards. So that begs the question, of course, why don't we do this with all the skills? Why don't we let a submarine machinist who is about to go into the diesel engine and start up that diesel engine, something he might have practiced in a classroom 6 months earlier, but haven't had a chance to actually do in real life, why wouldn't he be able to do that just minutes before he's going to go into the real machine room and do that skill? So that was the challenge that we were presented with the US Navy. And I'll take you through this case study here, where they had still have a program that is pretty advanced compared to most other training programs. They call it the Merge 3D program, where they bring the sailors into a classroom. Each sailor has a large touch screen. They're interacting with the 3D environment of the submarine in this case, but it's through a flat screen. But it has the problems of any classroom training, which is that it's a one and done type of exercise, where you have a steep forgetting curve. You all know about the research on the forgetting curve and how the half-life of new knowledge is decays within minutes and hours after you step out of that classroom. They also had the challenge of it being, while it's a 3D environment, you're interacting with it on a 2D screen, and you have all of the costs associated with travel and hiring instructors. And in fact, classroom congestion costs the US Navy $400 million a year because sailors have to wait for the next class to open up before they can get the training and get out on the ship.
That's what we call a backlog of courses in the Navy. Anders, as you know, my background is the Navy. Yeah. And so backlogs were something that we greatly disliked.
Yeah. There's just so much waste. We're just waiting to get into to that classroom, and then they go out on missions, and they're out for 6 months. I was shocked when we got into this. I come from the Swedish Navy. I did my mandatory service there. We don't have any 6 months tours, but they go out literally for 6 months on a submarine without sometimes even seeing the sun. And there's no real formal way to do this type of training when they're out on that submarine. And they might, again, take them several months before they get into a machinery room, for instance, and do a task. And also you have the problem of inconsistent quality depending on which instructor you get. So we took that challenge, and they started with submarine because they figured if we can do training on a submarine, we can do it anywhere, given the constraints and the limited spaces there. So we develop a virtual reality training that could be done when you're physically on board a submarine. So you get that spaced repetition, practicing over and over, and right before you're going to go into the machinery room. And the high realism of actually physically being there, and lower cost because you're using affordable consumer devices. And everything is standardized. This is self-paced training. So what does this look like? We talked a lot about this, but let's take a look at what it looks like from inside of the VR headset. So now you have to imagine that you're wearing a VR headset and you're stepping into the machine room, and you start by getting your instructions. Now, typically, you'll see in the other examples, you'll have instructions on the wall here, but because there's so little space in a machinery room, we came up with this concept of sort of a digital iPad that you carry with you in VR. So imagine how you're physically walking around in the machinery room, and you have to get to this valve, for instance, you physically have to get down on your knees to turn it with using both hands. And you see the instructions there that shows you exactly what to do step by step, gives you text instructions, video instruction, and you follow that. And then you reach out, you grab a wrench in this case, you lean in to crank on that bolt. And that's a visual indicator that it indicates the tightness. And the funny thing is that this gives you just enough visual stimuli to start imagining even that there's resistance in your hand, because everyone knows what it feels like to tighten or untighten a bolt. And just that visual indicator just gives you enough to, and you also have a slight vibration in the hand controller. So there's a little bit of haptic feedback involved. And also, of course, 3D sound that comes from the direction. So you're hearing the machine as you're doing these steps. And so you're carrying around this little instruction here, and step by step turning on the engine. Now, if we go back to the PowerPoint, please. We took this out to sailors who had done the 2D training program in the classroom, and who had also been out doing this in real life. And we did a user test where we asked them to rate how well they liked the experience in the VR headset. And the feedback was just astonishing. We've never seen these type of numbers in anything we've done. So rate your overall impression of the VR approach to learning and practicing skill. Everyone rated excellent or good, with 3/4 saying excellent. And how would you compare the experience of this VR training to a touchscreen training program that they were used to? One person was neutral to it. Everyone else thought VR was much better or better. Every single person thought it was easy to use. Would you be interested in using VR simulation for learning and practicing other hands-on skills? Almost 80% would be very interested in that. So we know that that sailors like this, and this is something we're finding very consistently when we're in talking about barriers to VR. The main barrier is the users, particularly young users like these, love it. It's the decision makers and the instructors who are the roadblocks. It's hard to get them to get into the headset even, and to try it and to understand it. But once you get it out there, you're never going to have any problem with the user experience. Now, we did have some challenges, though, particular to using this on a submarine. So it turns out we underestimated just how cramped the space is on these submarines. And you do need a bit of open space, say at least 12 by 12 feet area to walk around in and be able to fling your arms and do this hands-on room scale and hand presence exercises. And the only place to do that on a submarine was in their torpedo room, so the lack of physical space to do this was a big barrier. And then also cybersecurity. You have a headset here with outward-facing cameras and Bluetooth connections and microphone, and we're working through that. But that was another barrier. So a complement that we came up with are these handhelds. And this leads into a conversation we'll have a lot here during this session, is that once you developed it for the VR headset, you can also develop it for any other device, any flat screen device. Now, there is certainly a trade-off. You're trading off the complete sense of embodied presence in VR with a touch screen that you're interacting with. But obviously, the accessibility with something like this that you can hold in your hand. And so this is the same form factor as the Nintendo Switch, which everyone, all your kids have played, I'm sure. But it is actually a Windows machine. It's a Windows 11 PC. So these came out just last year, this category of devices, and it addresses for the Navy the space and comfort and cybersecurity issues. And to them, this was like a perfect device to use on the ship. So we're now actually developing this for the handheld. And if we play the next video there, Rob, I'll show you a little bit of what that looks like. So you have a nice touch screen in the middle there, and you have game controllers to the side that this audience is certainly very familiar with. And you do the same steps that you saw there, either on the touch screen, or you can just use the controllers, and you follow the arrows on the deck there. You open things up, you turn on the machine, you hear the sound. And so imagine this is something that you can sit in the mess hall. You can even lay down in your bunk and do the training. And so we've just finished this module and are going to take it out to the sailors to get some feedback. Now, this category of devices is just exploding in the marketplace. So if we go back to the PowerPoint at CES here, the big electronics show, there were just a plethora of variations of these devices, and some of them have vastly bigger screens, and some of them have removable game controllers to the side, like the Nintendo Switch does too. But they're all PC devices. Now, many of them are Chinese makers, which of course is a no-go for most of you federal people. But there are, in fact, 3 Taiwanese makers. We are using the Asus ROG Ally right now, but Acer and MSI, other Taiwanese makers, are making devices. They all look very similar to this one. And Microsoft Xbox have made announcements that they're going to come out with a variation of this as well. Now, to add on to this, there's also a new category of glasses that you can connect to the handheld. And they're not VR glasses, because you're not stepping into a world where you can physically walk around, but rather they're obviously, as you can see, a lot more lightweight and easy to use. And what they do is you project a giant virtual screen in front of you. So this is something that's getting rave reviews, where people are using it on flights, where you can see a giant screen and you're still holding on to the hand controller as you're and just using the buttons as you're interacting with this beautiful high fidelity screen in front of you. So just another variation. There's so many variations now to get this out in the field. If VR is still going to be the gold standard, where you can move around, you reach out with your hands to interact with things, but this is a pretty good complement to that. So I'll stop here and ask, do we have any comments or questions on this? I'll lean on my panel here if you've been reading anything.
Just wondered, Anders,
Mhm.
the interchangeability, I mean, you mentioned it once that you could go from the, one screen to another or one type of
Mhm.
handheld operation. So are there standards that have been set for this that apply across the board that make them more interchangeable?
Right. When you develop, so these are typically developed in professional game engines like Unity and Unreal, and so once you develop once in the game engines really are the ones providing the standard developing environment. And certainly you have to do some modifications to the interface when you go from a flat screen where you have a touch screen and you have buttons to a VR environment where you're reaching out with your hands. But that's a very minor part. That's maybe 10-20% of the development effort. And to go from one flat screen to another are minimal work. And of course, this can it can be played. We're going to show examples of iPads and phones and any devices. Yeah, it's becoming very standardized. So it's you don't have to make the hard choices of what exact devices you're going to use for the most part. Obviously, once you bite the bullet and buy, if you need to buy thousands of devices, then you need to place your bets on particular devices. But as far as the development effort, that's extremely malleable for multiple devices.
And so it's Apple and PC.
Right. Yeah. In fact, Brian von Dyken here is going to show how they have their app. We're going to demo here up on the Apple App Store.
Okay. Russ,
Hey,
do you see some
Anders.
questions?
Yeah, I see a whole bunch,
Okay.
maybe too many.
Yeah.
I may have missed this, but there's a question from Valerie. Is it MR? I don't know what the acronym MR
Oh,
is.
mixed reality, right? Yeah. So yeah, let's talk about that. So these latest headset, this is the Quest 3 from Meta, has both the $300 and the $500 version has outward-facing cameras. So it predicts so it becomes like see-through glasses headsets essentially, where you see the real world around you a little grainy still, but almost perfect, say 95% perfect, 90% perfect. You can walk in a staircase with them. And then you can superimpose virtual object on top of the real world around you. So that's what, the terminology now is that AR, augmented reality or mixed reality. Uh, yeah, for my and there's of course spatial computing is what Apple is the term Apple is using. It's all pretty much the same idea of merging the real world around you with virtual objects and being able to walk around in a
Yeah,
ideally the future vision is to walk around in a machine room, for instance, and have instructions superimposed as you're actually working on the real equipment.
great answer. Thank you for that.
Jolly had a question. He said, "Can a haptic response be integrated with VR?" So I think you said yes,
Right.
but
So the only haptic response we have on these programs that you're going to see here is the vibration in the hand controllers. Actually goes a real long way. When you grab a tool, you get the vibration. When you're turning that wrench, it vibrates. And even though that doesn't match with exactly how it feels in real life, that vibration really adds along with the absolute realism you see in the headset. Actually goes a real long way. You can, of course, get creative with having physical objects that you interact with as well. There's also work on gloves and forced feedback gloves where it stops you in the action and simulate holding a real object. Now those gloves are still clunky and far out, and integrating physical objects is just makes it adds a lot of complexity, and there's just so many benefits to having something that's so compact where it's just this in the
Mm,
headset that you can ship out. And for I think 95% of the use cases we see, the haptic and hand controllers is sufficient. So let's take a few more questions as we go along with this. But I think I'll just wrap this up before we let first guest talk here. So one way of so I've talked a lot about here different use cases, starting with the computer lab, right? This is we've modified this graph. You've probably seen it elsewhere. This 4x4, but I think it's a nice way of looking at how these different approaches to VR fit with each other, and how you can develop once and use it for in a lot of different ways. So you can certainly use it on a flat screen in a computer lab, but you have all of the drawbacks we discussed of its one and done event. Now, a step up from that is obviously bringing people into a physical training demonstration where you have a piece of physical equipment that you can work on, and you might even have augmented reality glasses that are superimposing instructions over that physical piece of equipment that you're working on. Now, that's typically the gold standard of realistic training, of actually working on the real thing, but it's very costly, and usually your students only get to do it like once, and they don't get to see a lot of different scenarios. So that's on the classroom side, and has all of the issues of the forgetting curves and the high cost and infrequency. So on the other side of the axis here, with the you have forward deployed training, and with high realism, you have VR. So that's where I think really is the sweet spot for training, where you can do it on a ship, in a barrack, wherever you are, and you have an absolute sense of realism that gets really close to what it is like to be there uh, in real life. There are limitations, of course. You don't quite feel the haptic feedback, as someone mentioned, that for some tasks like in medicine and other areas, surgeries and stuff, it's certainly a barrier, but gets really close. And then you have these like everything from phones and tablets to the handheld gaming PCs that I think is going to play a real important role for a lot of training, that gives you those reps and sets, and gives you incredible access to practice things over and over, even though, again, you are sacrificing a lot of the immersive and sense of realism you get in the headset. So I think this is kind of a helpful way to look at the strengths and weaknesses of where these different platforms fit in, and the point here is obviously that you can develop it once, and you can deploy it in multiple ways and use it in concert with each other.
Just a quick question. How is AI impacting what you're doing in VR?
Oh, that's a great question. So as far as the development process, of course, we're using it more to develop the script and the feedback. Our artists are playing around with it. Our programmers are playing around, or using it to just having some success with it. So there's that side of making the development more efficient. And in honesty, we haven't been able to get any real big efficiency gains, but that's coming for sure. That's absolutely, in the next few years, it's going to revolutionize development and make these type of experiences a lot more cost efficient to develop. The other side is, of course, where you're really reinventing the learning experiences, having, say, characters in the a virtual assistant, a sidekick, AI-driven person that you can talk to in the environment, and you can point at anything in that machine room, and it will explain to you what it does. And so we haven't done that yet, but the technology pieces are coming in place here, where you can start doing that. So if anyone is doing anything, love to hear about it in chat here.
Yeah, we should book you for a workshop in a year, okay?
Yeah, I know. yeah, it's I'm super excited about it. I have the paid subscription for 3 different services, and use it all the time, just in my like proposal and emails, and just in everyday work, and more and more. In addition to just making job more efficient and polish my writing, I'm starting to use it for like more vexing problems that I'm facing in our business, and client challenges, and having conversation using the voice app on ChatGPT on the phone is actually amazing to have like have a side really smart assistant that you can talk through problems with.
Okay. Thanks, Anders.
So yeah, any questions before we I introduce you to our first guest here? Let's, without further ado, then, Brian, there you are.
Yeah, you're able to hear me?
Yeah. So Brian has we worked with him for the last several years on a very ambitious, certainly our most ambitious VR program, a program that's actually takes like 10 hours to go through as a student in the VR headset, and for a very interesting, unique use case. So I'll turn it over to you, Brian, to introduce yourself and take us through what we've been working on.
Thanks, yeah, Anders. So my name is Brian Meyer. I have worked in the pharmaceutical industry for the last 10 plus years, primarily working in cell therapy. Really find it a rewarding business to work in. Every one of our patients is an individualized lot of medicine, right? So we're really crucial to getting every single lot out the door successfully. We saw virtual reality as a way to potentially train people better, faster, in a more standardized way. Our kind of problem statement or challenge that we were looking to get through was really a fast onboarding of a lot of operators. We had limited physical training spaces and limited instructors. So when training a person, you may be a 1-to-1 or a 1-to-2. It may take hours to do initial observations. It may take hours to do practices, hands-on, and then maybe more hours on top of that to do the actual qualification of that individual. So this really adds up time. It adds up time for the space that's very expensive, and it adds up time for the people going through it. We also saw that the cost was really high, right? So when you're touching physical components, every one that we're using in our industry are single use. So that would be something that after we're done using it is going to go into a biohazard container that may be something you see in a doctor's office, and then be sent off as regulated medical waste. So the cost of the actual consumable, but then also the cost of disposing it, all really gets expensive. So we want to figure out a way to do this training in a better way. And we thought virtual reality might be the way to do it. Here on the page, as Anders said, you can see different ways that we built this out. The headset that is worn in this photo is what we used. It's the Oculus Quest. This headset is hands-free. It's not tethered to anything. You can put it on. You can do it in a specialized space, but you can also do it really anywhere that you want. You could do it in an office. You could do it in a chair. However, we wanted to make our modules look as realistic and feel as realistic as being on the floor. So we actually did design them, as Andrew said, to be quite long, but we wanted to kind of test and vet that people would be able to stand for a long period of time, as they would have to do in the manufacturing space. We wanted to test that someone would be able to be committed to something for a long period of time, be able to follow instructions as the instructions are in an actual manufacturing space. This was all done in our virtual reality modules. We as Anders showed in the videos earlier today, we had a text that people were reading, and that would be traditionally reading a standard operating procedure and following those steps. There was a video component. That video would show you what to do, and then you're actually hands-on doing what you're supposed to be doing. So we ran a pilot. The pilot went really, really well. Kind of the similar data that Anders was showing in his Navy use case as well. We had a 98% user acceptance with one outlier. That one outlier, unfortunately, did not end up being a manufacturing operator. The individual that did not like the experience, did not like what they were going through, just had an overall negative opinion of it, was someone that was not able to stand and work for a long period of time in a manufacturing space, ultimately deeming them not able to do the job. So I do understand that we made our modules difficult to stand and be in for a long period of time. We could have made them much more simple, could have made them so you could sit and go through them, but that wasn't the intent. The intent was to actually vet someone out and vet if they were able to do their job. So I think it did just that. Unfortunately, we did have one person that didn't like it, but it did a great job of vetting that person out, and in something that would have happened anyway. In the training curriculum, they ended up getting vetted out. So we saved millions of dollars we potentially saved millions of dollars in our pilot. That was done through the savings of those consumables and saving of trainer time. As I had mentioned, the trainer time is one of the hardest resources to have, and it's expensive to have people there and watching the process as it's going on, as well as the space. Our processes are all done in a regulated clean room, and the clean room is very much an expensive resource. It's a HEPA filtered environment with those expensive consumables, expensive pieces of equipment. So how to identify a great opportunity for VR? Pick something that's hands-on. Pick something that is going to require muscle memory. Pick something that you're going to go and do, and it's going to be something that many people are going to go and do, right? So how do you get that return on investment? You're going to have multiple people going through the same module. Also, don't pick something that's changing. Don't pick a process that's going to change every 6 months or be upgraded every 6 months. You want to have this virtual reality module, once you build it, something that can be used for a longer duration. Something that's expensive. Like I said, our consumables were very expensive. So if you can not use any of those consumables, you're saving a ton of money. Again, that trainer time, the operator's time, and things that are costly or expensive to do wrong. Maybe if you use that piece of equipment wrong, you're going to break it. Or maybe if it gets bumped into or things happen, it's an expensive thing to mess up. But also do things that are expensive or costly on the back end, like Anders mentioned with the plane, right? If you're going to have a mistake with that plane, it is going to be a very expensive mistake and cost lives. So make sure you pick a VR use case that's going to have some implication if things go wrong. We always like to say things that are dangerous, risky, or impossible to train other ways. I've seen a lot of really successful modules that are things like active shooters or driving under impairments. And these modules, you really want to test something that you really wouldn't put somebody out of the situation in any other way.
We actually have Umberto Vega, who's involved in this, who led this effort in chat here. He's already answered some of the questions. One was a question about motion sickness. You actually did the research. Do you want to speak to that, Brian?
Yeah, honestly, so the Gronstedt group is a phenomenal partner in this. We vetted a lot of other companies, and really it comes down to how well the programmers can program. The actual wearing of the headset, you really need to look at the hardware, right? So when you look at headsets, they're not all created equally. Different headsets will have different refresh rates as different TVs or different computers do. So the clarity that you're getting to see the image is important on the hardware component. So you're getting a better hardware is going to give you a better experience. As the technology evolves, Anders said the Quest 3, right? You have all this see-through capabilities. You don't feel as isolated inside the headset. Some of those other headsets were tethered or wired to the wall, so you didn't really feel free to move around. All these advancements in technology have come a long way. And like he said, they're $300 to $500 gets you a really, really nice headset these days. Then comes the actual stitching. So when we say stitching, that's when if I were to move really quickly, does it snap or does it feel fluid, right? So the motion that you're seeing in these modules, Anders already played a few videos of people moving in the module. It feels natural. As fast as you can move your hands, as fast as things are happening, your brain can only process it as fast as their programming does. So initially, it was very glitchy and felt poor to be in those scenarios. But over time, it's not like that anymore.
Yeah.
So motion sickness is pretty much.
I'll say that problem is really a solved problem as long as you develop it properly.
And I think it's definitely when trying to get people in VR that have never been VR, it's definitely that preconceived bias. I can say from experience, I tried to get my father into my VR headset and say, "Hey, look what I'm doing at work," and he's like, "I'm not putting that thing on my head." And I'm like, "You play normal video games, like you've done this before." And he was like, "I'm not doing it." And he's like, "I'm gonna get nauseous. I'm gonna get sick." And I'm like, "Just put it on. Just try it." He put it on. He's like, I can't believe that this is what it's like." He's like, I didn't think it was going to be like this. So as Anders said, get people in the headsets, get people doing it. Don't let people's biases keep them away from what they're doing. So how to get started, right? Get people in the headset. Conduct demos across the country, across your company. Get some small module put together. Get something there so that people can get in. Start talking about the benchmarks across the industry, right? Know what other pharmaceutical companies are already doing in VR. Know what other people are thinking about doing. Get yourself exposed at different conventions. Understand what the industry is doing, whether you're using it to show something, whether you're using it to teach something, whether you're using it to be in another place. Understand what's out there. Find a sponsor. Get someone in executive leadership to help you and get things done. Minimize the proprietary content. That was a big one for us. I wouldn't be here talking to you if we did a module that was proprietary. Everything that was in the module that we created can be shown to you. It's nothing special. It's use of general equipment that anyone can go out and buy. It's not a specific BMS way of doing something. It's not, in no way, shape, or form is it proprietary. If you do something proprietary, again, it's just going to have to be held closer to the belt. You cannot let other people in on that information. So You could definitely do a module that is proprietary to your industry or to your company, but just know that it's gonna be harder to roadshow. It's gonna be harder to get out there. Do something that's simple first, and then get a lot of people in it and get that return on investment shown.
And Umberto, who is in chat here, who was the executive sponsor, man, he was, I understood, carrying around the headset everywhere he went, and didn't just show videos, but actually did live demos wherever he went, right?
Yeah,
and put people in headsets, and
it's the only way. You have to
yeah.
get people in a headset. If people don't understand what it is, or never, there's that preconceived bias.
Yeah. Great.
Um,
So yeah, let's talk a little bit about how you went about, and of course, in the next month here, we'll get a lot deeper into this, but a very high level how we went about developing it.
Yes, designing comes with the big picture, right? So you want to understand what you're going to teach your end client, right? So when you're designing a module, if you start off with kind of these piecemeal ideas, it's going to get expensive. You're going to have to redesign and redesign, and make different iterations or versions of your end product. So you really want to go to the designing phase with that whole picture in mind. You want to make sure that you're going to make something that gets the intended result. You're going to teach someone to do something, or you're going to teach someone how to get through something. So getting the development team, maybe Gronstedt group or anyone else, right? Getting them as many pictures, getting them as many CAD drawings, getting them as many physical architecture assets up front so they understand what they're working with, getting them as many operating procedures so that they understand what the order of operations might be or what the steps might be in the programming. All these things need to kind of be outlined up front so you can even get some sort of price or quote to get something built, but then also understand what the final product's going to look like. You also, again, need to decide on your hardware, right? You need to understand what it's going into. So if you're going to use handheld devices or you're going to use headsets, you need to understand what the end medium is going to be. The really cool thing about virtual reality is with the coding, all errors can be caught, or all designed errors can be caught, right? So if you're doing an order of operations step and someone skips a step, maybe a normal trainer or a normal person who's helping multiple people at the same time wouldn't catch that. But in virtual reality, the code catches it. The code knows if you did something in the right order. And what's cool is you can just repeat it, right? So in the normal environment that we were in, that consumable would be lost or ruined. But in virtual reality, you just hit reset, right? Or automatically resets and pushes you back. A good design component that we did is anytime you drop something on the floor, it would basically come back onto the countertops. That was something that would happen in a lab space all the time, but that would cost that consumable where you'd have to then wait for another consumable to come back into the space. You'd have to transact that consumable and then you get to use it again. So this can be very costly and time consuming. In virtual reality, it takes a second. It just pops back up on the counter, throws an error, and lets you know what you did. And make sure these metrics are, again, something you can measure and evaluate. You don't want to go off theoretical when you're trying to pitch this to leadership.
And oh my gosh, I see Manisha is in the audience here, who was on the team. And speaking of testing, spent countless hours. Testing is, you can spend all the time in the world on developing the design, but even for us experienced VR developers, it's really hard to imagine what it would look like when you actually have it in VR. So this becomes a very iterative process, and thankfully the game engines are real-time game engines, so you can step into it at an early phase in the VR headset, try it out, provide feedback. So lots of iteration. And this is, of course, a mixed blessing sometimes, where it can be hard to keep projects in scope because you come up with so many ideas once you start testing. So sometimes you have to be put down your foot and put things on a phase 2 when ideas come up.
Yeah, and as Anders alluded, your original testers have to be people that are really committed to this cause. When you get it out to the general population, you need it to be right first time. You don't want people getting in and things glitching or things going wrong or forgetting a step. Your initial testers are really, really important, and they may have to go through it a bunch of times. So definitely make sure that your initial testers, your initial team, whoever's doing this, is really invested in the cause, because it can take a considerable amount of hours.
So let's take a look at what this actually looked like in the headset. So Rob, if you'll cue up the video, and we can talk over here what you're seeing. So again, this is the best we can do, is to show videos, and we're mixing here with first person perspective. So if we can do video 3 there. There we go. So this is what you will see in the VR headset. The next video here will show outside of the video, outside of the headset. But yeah, Brian, are you able to see the video and talk to it?
Right now I see the word ceiling. Is it playing?
Oh, okay. Yeah, it is. Okay, I'll just talk to it if
I can see it now. I'll talk through it.
okay,
So
yeah.
basically, as what you're seeing here is the typical instruments, and what you can see is the coding that's built in, so that different things are going to highlight, different things are going to illuminate. That haptic feedback every time you click on something, you're actually feeling it. The Gronstedt group actually did a phenomenal job of really making this stuff feel real. I don't think, unless you've been in this, you can understand how intricate and how hard it is to make tubes and fluid look real inside of a bag. When you're grabbing these and you're stretching these and you're pulling them, your hands almost feel like they're pulling together. Your hands almost feel like you're holding the tubing. The coding feels so real. What you're seeing on the screen, like I said, are just these little pop-ups that are telling you what you're doing. They're right in front of your face. You can read them. You're getting the positive feedback when you do something right. You're getting negative feedback when you do something wrong. And on that screen in front of you, which is mimicking television screens that would be around a room, you're seeing the procedure as it's written. You're seeing video content that tells you how to do things. And I just can't iterate how much this feels real when you're in a headset. It just looks like a video right now, but when you're in a headset, it really transports you to being there. We have pre-recorded noises, so when you're using this instrument on the screen now, you can hear the beep, you can hear the click, you can hear things that just make it seem so real. When throwing things out in the garbages, we wanted to make that a little simpler, so when the coding recognizes that you're in the general area, it kind of magically opens in front of you. We didn't think that throwing something in a garbage and opening the top was a necessary thing to train. But what was necessary was teaching people to throw things in the right garbages. You wouldn't want to throw a sharp item in a normal garbage, and you wouldn't want to throw a regulated item into a normal garbage. So again, teaching people what's necessary in VR is a hard task to kind of pick what is and is not necessary. But really, that order of operations and understanding your process will get you to the end goal.
Does it tell you, it's telling you when you do something right, but does it tell you when you do something wrong?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure if this is in this video, but what'll actually happen is you'll get this beeping noise in the headset, and then arrows will point your vision to the center of the screen, and then there will be an error message that says exactly what you did wrong. So maybe you dropped an item on the floor, maybe you sprayed something with alcohol while it was still powered on, really just general things that you could do wrong, and then the message would tell you exactly what you did wrong. You then clear that error message. If it made sense, it would actually just teleport you back a step, and you would redo that step, so you'd understand what you did wrong, gets a chance to redo it. But that's how it would tell you. So yeah, every time you make a mistake.
A lot of times we start them in a learning mode where we stop them as soon as they make a mistake. We stop them in the action. You get to do it again until you get it right. And then once you're through the whole process, we have a practice mode where you get to do the whole thing and you get feedback afterwards. And sometimes we even add a timer, usually not for these type of life critical skills, but for some of our industrial clients, for instance, where the stakes are not quite as high, we will have a timer even for in the last step there where you get to challenge yourself to do it in time.
So you're
Yeah,
testing.
and the timer component is really, really important, as Anders mentioned, right? So we had specific steps where you'd have to do a second, right? And as you're going and you're flying through the steps, you start shortening a second. But in the coding, you can make a second take a pure second. So if you start letting go of the controller button in under a second, in 0.8 or 0.7 or 0.6 of a second, it's going to recognize that. So every one of those can be coded as an error. So once you've done 100 of those seals or 100 of those manipulations, you're never going to let go in under a second anymore, because you're really tired of that error message popping up. So it's really cool how the coding can teach.
Umberto was suggesting that he wanted to use the electric shock, but somebody didn't agree with that.
These vibrations can shock you a little bit, but that's about as far.
I've actually gotten to do a simulation. It was a more in-person simulation, but it was a police simulation where they did use.
Yeah, I've done this too. They're pretty painful. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Well, I think so as you're just let me ask you a question about the design of this. So So when you're using your testers, and those are people who are used to doing these procedures, you're asking them, so what could go wrong here? What did I do wrong? What do we have to build in for the mistakes that could be made? And so you have to cover all of that, as well as how do you do it right? So the scripting is really important here, and the people who do the job on a daily basis are the ones who can really support your design at that point.
Yeah, and what's really cool is if you get a few of those subject matter experts, you can build a module that then you can transpire to thousands or hundreds of sites, right? So if you only have the subject matter experts in one specific area, you can take that data, put it into a virtual reality module, and then just send headsets where you want them to be. And that's kind of the next and last slide is how do you deploy this, right? And it's so important to deploy properly, right? So you can get really bogged down. It's easy to put. So Anders will laugh, but this is where we all came from, right? You would have to take a single headset and take a wire and put it into a computer and transfer a file onto that headset. Maybe it would work, maybe it wouldn't work, and then you'd have a headset that you could turn on and get it to go in the module. We're so far past that now, where you can put these modules into a web-based service. You can push them to the headset. There's plenty of these services to look at, but now you can basically have someone go, like we said, go to Target, go to Amazon, buy a headset, go to Meta, buy a headset, and push remotely a module to them and log right in. Not only are these compliant options, right? So you can have an industry where you have a specific instance of that program where you can push and pull modules that are 100% secure, so no one else can see them, or you can actually push these modules to anyone. So it depends on how you want to do that, but deploying these modules and having a way of doing that is really important. And we designed a really amazing virtual reality space where we had individual mats and a room dedicated for this, but we also had our headsets right on like a rollout cart. You could grab that cart and bring it to another area and do this inside of an office space. It was not limited to that really nice area we had. It was something that you could do anywhere you wanted. And that's really the success story of VR. These headsets have come so far, you can do it anywhere.
So how do you protect the entrepreneurial or the classified material as you're loading things?
Yeah, you just build just like your laptop, right? If your laptop was stolen from you, you'd have to sign on to that laptop to gain access to the information that's inside of it. These headsets have the same exact capabilities. So you can create pins, you can create sign-ons, you can lock down the headset, you can remote wipe them, you can geo-track them, you can do anything you want with those headsets depending on what you want to pay for. So there are solutions for all of that. So yeah, you have to work with your cybersecurity team. You have to keep IT close. But if you can get to that golden umbrella of being able to get them on your network, get them in a place where they can be actually monitored, you have a really simple solution. And it's traditional sign-on. You sign on with your username and password, just like you sign on anything else. They're just an Android operating system.
Okay.
It's very much, you can think of it as on your phone. I'm sure most of you have work apps on your employees' phones. So it's an app sitting on the headsets. It's run locally. And in the BMS case, it was run completely standalone, no internet connection even. But then you can obviously update it centrally and wipe, like Brian said, wipe it off, much like you would with phone deployment. Quest has a plan, and you guys were actually pilots, early closed beta pilots for the Quest platforms, but there are also third-party platforms that do this.
Have you done any other VR-based training, Brian?
Yeah, I definitely got to do a few other things. So kind of like Anders was saying, a lot of times you'll see VR at conventions or things like that. I've been part of creating modules that were purely just to put on and experience something, right? So you're gonna put on the headset and get transported somewhere else, not technical at all, maybe using a single controller and a single action of clicking on things. But now you're somewhere, you feel like you're somewhere else. These modules were designed to kind of magic school bus you, basically get you into a cell therapy cell and actually see how those cells are interacting with other cells. So that magic school bus environment is such a cool place to be with virtual reality as well. You can use it as a training tool and teach doctors how cells are interacting, working with different companies to design what that looks like. Maybe it looks like a computer rendered drawing, maybe it looks like a real drawing, but you're immersed in it. So I've also gotten to experience modules that are just like that. I've also implemented modules that are more of like an engineering facilities type module where you're basically getting into a CAD drawing of a building and getting to walk around a building that's not built yet. You can see it, you can feel it. If you're 6'4" and you're walking under a beam, it's going to feel like it's buzzing your head. And if you're shorter, it's going to feel like it's further from you. But that's real, right? When you put on a VR headset, it understands how tall you are. So if you're walking around that space, it's gonna feel different for someone of different heights. So I've gotten to do something like that as well too.
Generally, did you, just quickly, because we're running, I don't want to press our time, how difficult has it been for you to get the funding to do this? Is it much more expensive, less, comparable?
I think it goes in waves. I think, different companies at different, points in their maturity or different points in their desire for innovation. It can be extremely easy or it can be extremely hard. I've seen both, right? The idea is to develop a really stout return on investment use case. I had a great career in operations excellence, so I've gotten the opportunity to design use cases like that. I think that's helped me generate revenue when I needed it. But sometimes it's just not there. The idea is not there. And that's when you need to get people in. You need to really get boots on the ground and show people at what's possible. And it's not always building your own module first, right? Go to these conventions, understand what companies are out there, what demos are available. A lot of times they're free. A company like Anders Group may, give you a module to put on your headset for $300, right? You could put a module on a headset that's a non-proprietary module, and you can go roadshow someone else's module and say, hey, we could have something like this, custom designed for us to do our thing, but at least this way they get in and they get to feel it. So for me, it's really road showing. It's getting people to understand what your end goal is.
Yeah, and then showing them the cost effectiveness of it. I mean, the return on investment on use is so important. I mean, particularly for the feds as we get into this doji atmosphere that we're entering right now. I mean, Erica was going to be with us today, but had to do a little something for the Marines about financing for their training and education. So it's upon us, so it's really important that we consider this and how impactful this sort of approach to the work can be, because I think it's fabulous and we all want to do it, but realistically we have to make sure we make the case for it. So
a few quick questions from chat here. So 508 compliance, Kim is asking for, it always comes up, and we don't have any certainly definitive answers to that, but we did make it so you can stand or sit down, so everything can be done seated. And if you're not able to reach out with your hands, you can do a lot of things just using the buttons on the hand controller. And for the instructions, we have text instructions, voiceover, for some of our programs of voiceover instructions. But with all that said, this is a very visual medium. For the visually impaired, we really don't have any really good solutions other than obviously high contrast in colors. It's not a perfect fit. So the answer there is to use other devices, and being able to use tablets, PCs, gaming devices like this for people who are not able to do it in VR is perhaps the best answer. And then, as far as there were questions about how to report to LMS. Brian, do you want to? That was
that was a fun journey that we went down. But basically, any very proficient company like Gronstedt Group, they just basically build in a code. So that code understands what we needed to understand. So if the desired outcome was to know when someone has completed a module, they could send a completion code. So like I mentioned, you would sign in with your username. So if it knew that Brian Cusselmeyer had signed in, Brian Cusselmeyer had completed the module, it could send a completion. We may also embed in quizzes or questions or things during the module. If that data is also necessary, Gronstedt group can also build in a code to pull that data. It's really understanding what you actually care about at the end. It's harder to hotspot if you don't really know what you want, but it can absolutely be done. So an LMS system, if it's just tracking completions and you want to know if someone went through the headset, you're going to have some limitations. Networking and internet has always been my biggest foe. But if you can get on your corporate internet or your corporate Wi-Fi, you'll have a way to push and pull those modules directly. We've also done like a server version of that where the headset would push directly to a server, and that server could understand the text data, and then that server could then push to LMS. So there's a lot of options out there. You just got to get how to get creative with it and understand what your cybersecurity limitations are and your tech limitations are.
And anyone who wants to know more, Brian Foss, a lead developer, is in chat here. So feel free to geek out in text chat.
I can't say enough good things about Brian.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. So yeah, and there was a question. Yeah, we did use it's now called Quest for Business Service for the device management of this program. Cool. I think we need to wrap up this case study. But Brian, you're gonna hang around here, right? So we can feel free to ask other questions and also chime in here in video and text. But thank you so much. Great case study.
Thanks for having me.
And with that, I want to introduce our second Brian here, Brian Dewhurst from Daikin. Are you with us? Hey, you are.
Hey, how are you?
Hey.
Yep, adding in another Brian.
Yes.
All right,
Yeah. Do you want to tell us what you've been doing?
you bet. So, Brian Dewhurst, I'm part of Daikin Applied. Daikin is the largest HVAC company in the world, just not in the US. Not yet. We're getting there. I'm part of the Daikin Learning Group. Joined Daikin to really be part of our transformation in the learning space, transforming to a digital solution and an integrated digital solution. What I want to talk about today, though, is this has been, I was thinking through this, Anders, over 4.5 years now, I think. Wow. That we've been working on this. So Daikin had a challenge where we started this actually for a couple of reasons, but we wanted to be able to show some of our large equipment that you can't always show in person. We wanted to be able to show things that were impossible. We partnered with our marketing and sales group to come up with a photorealistic, robust solution of two of our major products, and have really been able to leverage this for several years now, even and across different areas. So let's go on to the next slide. I'll talk about the first one. The first one we created it's a product called a WMT chiller. Now this product was new to market at the time. There was actually only one prototype in the world, and we wanted to bring it to a show. It was also too heavy to bring to a show. It would have gone through the floor at any of our conference centers. We would. And these are very large pieces of machinery, 3,000 pounds or more, or 36,000 pounds or more. But we had to show this because this was a competitive advantage. And so you'll see this a little bit later on, but what we did to develop this one is we focused on what were the key selling points from a product marketing standpoint, as well as what's some really cool things we've never been able to see, which is literally inside of one of these units when they're working, which is literally impossible. The second product that we developed into our solution, we actually did this in 2 stages. We started with this one, which is makes cold water. That's a WMT chiller. Now, engineers, don't correct me. I'm just going to say it makes cold water, okay? The other one here, we make cold air, all right? But this one is unique because it's a very flexible product. So these are things that sit on rooftops of hospitals, very, very large university buildings, and they can be configured to the specific needs. You can add in things if you want it to be configured for a hospital. You can add in things if you want it to be configured for a school. And specifically, during pandemic times, it was focusing on cleaning the air. Well, this thing is huge. It's the size of a semi-trailer. So you can't exactly bring a bunch of those to a show and show people, and you definitely can't push a button and make it change in front of your eyes. And also, once again, we wanted to showcase the product as well as how it works in a unique way. So the next slide here, I think we were actually going to talk about. You want to show the video?
Right. Oh, shall we? Yeah, let's show what
Yeah.
this actually looks like. So if we do video 5 here. So this was going to be a little different. The video is played kind of with an outside camera, and it's a multiplayer environment. So you have a group of people here who are wearing headset and who appear as
Yeah.
character with floating heads and hands. Yeah, go ahead, Brian.
Mine's running a little slow, so I'm
Okay.
just going to talk through it as memory.
Yeah.
But what you're going to see on the screen is showing cold air moving to hot air. You see the red color into blue, and then not only did this solution and was it created as a multiplayer solution, we actually have it built in, and we'll talk about this a little later, that I could be in there together as, let's say, I'm the subject matter expert. I could pull in Anders, he's my customer. I could bring in Brian Foss, he's my sales rep, and we could be in there together, talking to each other, seeing each other, and looking at it at scale. But what you're seeing here and what's flashing up and down on the screen is the configuration of that unit right before people's eyes in the different configurations. There is our little group that we'd be selling and taking a look at this. As you see those parts also floating in and out, that was something that was unique. Now, this is the chiller unit, okay? This is the one that creates that cold water. And this one we leveraged truly, X-ray vision to go in and show not only the parts of the unit, but to see some of those scientific processes and things going on at the time. And mine went back to the Rebel Applied, but we can show that a little bit later in
Yeah.
the demo. Oh, there we go.
And actually, I'll just play it from the beginning here again
Yeah.
because it goes back pretty quickly. The reason why it looks a little funny if you haven't experienced multiplayer VR before with the floating heads and hands, and the reason for that is, of course, the only thing tracked in space is the head position and the hand position. But you actually get used to that really quickly, and you feel that like you're in the presence of other people. So to be clear, those floating heads and hands are real people appearing physically from all over the world, but having a complete sense of presence, of being together, working shoulder to shoulder, talking to each other. And a sales rep and an expert on the machine can point, and the customer can literally poke his head inside of it and see how it's working.
Yeah, that's an important point. We went to a couple of our sales rep offices, so our products are sold through sales reps. But so we actually, what was great is we were able to, in the room, set up stations for virtual reality. We were able to dial in one of the engineers of that product and have him join in virtual reality and do kind of that sales call, right? But it really did allow people to feel it at scale, and really they walked away with a sense of, oh, now I understand how this specific unit, the WMT chiller at the time, how this compressor works, why I care about this magnetic bearing. And then part of the impossible part too is what's unique about this unit that we were able to show is a power outage. And that's not something that you can do in real life. You can't just flip a switch on one of these. It would not be recommended. But you can simulate that and show, what that would look like and what it means to turn off and turn back on. So
Now, let's talk about the multiplayer. So if you play the video 6, we're going to see what this looks like on a phone, where someone else, my colleague Torbjörn in this case, is in a VR headset, right? And someone else is viewing it on a phone. So let me.
yeah, and there's a slide after this. I'll talk about it in detail, but this just allows people to join, and you can use your solution and kind of meet people where they're at. If you have someone that can't get into VR, if they literally they're going to be sick in a minute or something, you can have them join through this. People can pull this up and show things. You can pinch, you can, do whatever you need to right in front of you and show that. It really allows us to have different types of people join. And it gives you that flexibility, because if anyone has ever implemented a VR solution, you never know what you're going to run into at a conference, at a customer site, in your own building. We have a solution that can run literally on the phone, on the headset, or on a laptop, but also could run through a connection online. You create a session. So we weren't reliant on virtual reality, or excuse me, Wi-Fi, not virtual reality. We were reliant on Wi-Fi to make our solution work. So there was a lot of time spent making sure that we weren't having those little, what do you call it, little the jumps and the little glitches that really screw up your user experience.
So to be clear about what you're looking at here, this is a multiplayer session where
Yeah.
what someone is in a VR headset, that's a little character appearing there, talking to the person on the phone. It's pretty cool that you can
Yeah.
cross-platform multiplayer like this. Sales reps like being able to
Yeah.
pull up a phone at a lunch meeting or something, right?
Well, and you can be in the session or you can be watching it as kind of that third party. So that was
Right.
the great way that Anderson Group designed this, is that we once again we had those options. You could watch and be an observer of that meeting, or you were in there looking, or you're the one actually controlling it.
So going back to the PowerPoint, there was an interesting other flat screen application where you did the same thing on a giant screen. You want to talk about this?
Yeah, so you'll see in the bottom right there, so that was actually one of the engineers. He's doing a very large touch screen, and he's actually standing on that trailer you see on the left side. So, and I joined sessions sometimes. He would be traveling. This is called our Innovation Roadshow. And at Daikin, this trailer travels around the country. We show up to events. It can be sales events, it can be conferences, it can also be schools. We use this, for multiple applications. And I joined a session where Adam was on the trailer. He was there with a group of kids, and I show up and I'm waving and saying hi. We're having fun with it. But you're able to join while he's on the trailer. Using the touchscreen. So once again, you've got a laptop, you got the handheld, cell phone, or you've got the full immersive headset, and all those can work together in however you need to. So proved to be honestly very valuable. And for conferences, a lot of the time it was usually the large touchscreen that we would use, and that's something that is today still on that trailer, and we continue to use it. So this is just showing, the other one, because myself and my team had to support this. On the bottom there, we'd kind of advertise this and say, okay, if you want that immersive VR event, you're going to need an expert there. You're going to need someone who can troubleshoot these headsets and get it going. The duration, you're going to be in there about 5 minutes. Touchscreen event, oh, nope, that's easy. You can be a beginner. Anyone can walk up, touch the screen, do what they need to, self-directed. Collaborative VR, for sales and service, if you're on the actual product or on the phone or laptop. And then you had the learning VR self-discovery. So going back to the design of this, there were built into each of these, there's narration. So you're looking at the product and you're going through, and it can narrate an actual kind of a script, or it would talk to you and tell you what you're looking at. We had that. So we could use this for self-discovery. We could also have the joint sessions. We could have the across the country type session, so that's where we spent the time, and really through, Gronstedt Group and their guidance, to help us understand why that was important and why we needed to have that flexibility, because we never had an event where it didn't work. We never had an event where we weren't able to provide some type of experience. So that's something that really allowed us that flexibility.
And finally, Brian Kesselmeyer talked about what are the best use cases for VR, but you have a clever little abbreviation for that I
Well,
think
and
is
the other one I'd say too. So this is the dice concept, and it's we have on the bottom there where that came from, giving them credit for it. But sometimes you'll see this in a safety type thing. I've seen a VR thing where they're testing, and then if something blows up, well, you're not going to do that. The impossible for us, that was many things. We couldn't physically bring the product. We couldn't actually, it's impossible. We can't actually open up one of these working chillers, right, and have the refrigerant. Counterproductive. We're not going to build 10 versions of a Rebel Applied unit and bring those all to a show. We just can't do it. And the other one is expensive. It costs 6 figures to transport several of these across the country. So use that money for something else. But really, the most important thing is this was I'd say, so you're like, how do you get this approved? Is you work because you're going to use VR for not just learning. Learning is absolutely one of the business cases, but you're going to use it for recruiting. You're going to use it to showcase your company as an innovator. You're going to use it for something fun when maybe you'll have a group of STEM participants from a school that show. You will have ways to use this VR for different things, but ours supports the sales process, supports learning, supports the HR process for recruiting, as well as we even got to a point where because when you build it at scale, we had a couple of techs who were troubleshooting because they could figure out if they could crawl underneath that chiller and get at this valve, right? I mean, it becomes the needs or the uses are there. So
So
I
you're
think
actually using this, Brian, to train people who will be running the machinery once it's installed?
yeah. Now, what's interesting? Great question, Dr. Lane. And the other one is a technician. They're going to want to open up every nook and cranny of that thing, right? But a salesperson, we're focusing on some of the unique things. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, especially the chiller one, the big one with the tubes.
Mm-hmm.
That allowed people who have been working on that product for 40 years to go, oh, that's what that looks like. Or a new person to say, that's what you mean when you talk about the coils in there and how it evaporates. And then because when you zoom in, you can see it to that level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Years ago, I used to do the explosion drawings of, certain technical pieces. And so, after my own heart there, it's just great to see that sort of explosion of what is actually there and ripping away everything so that you can see how it operates.
Yeah, it was
It's a great solution for you.
a lot of fun.
Yeah, the idea of going where the money is, starting in marketing, marketing and sales, right? Getting them to pay for the development, and then once you have these environments, the rooftop and the basement and the equipment, you can use it for all these other purposes, for the recruitment and outreach to high schools, and of course technical training, which is and that was the plan all along, right? To start with marketing, and you had a deadline for that. That was a big event you had to get it done for, and actually the cost of developing it was about the same cost as it would cost to haul this giant piece of equipment to the Las Vegas whatever trade show. So it
And
actually
that was
paid
just
for
one
itself.
time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
and
And now you can use it
Then you had an
multiple
asset,
times.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and we're continuing. I know we're about at time, but we're continuing to figure out how to, in a smaller scale, build maybe just one part of that unit. We also have a parallel project going on within our company to figure out how to use VR in our prototyping process. Because why not? Because those drawings you saw, the origination of that was a CAD drawing. Now, Gronstedt, you worked their magic to turn it into VR. Let's be honest, there's no magic button. But now we're focusing on how can we show maybe one part of that and embed it within a e-learning and track it and have beyond videos playing and other things as well. So we're working on that concept and continuing to do that. And then we also want to, as augmented reality or mixed reality continues to grow, we want to use that as well, because I think that's a little bit more of the future or the direction we want to go.
Interesting.
And you're on the Apple App Store, right? Some last
Yeah,
few
we
weeks.
do. And
Yeah.
someone asked about what can you put in there? Well, we have to make sure corporate espionage is a very real thing in our industry. So if it's really, really important, you don't put it in there. So that's the level of our coolant is the most important. Our coolant, boy, they did yell at me. Refrigerant is most important. But so what we do is we don't have things widely available, but we can share them with people that we've vetted and kind of talked with. So yeah.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, thank you. Carla, any other questions or anything from chat here?
I don't see any questions. I see a lot of answers from Brian and other
Right.
people. So you all keep talking and we'll
All right.
keep talking.
All right, great. Well, thank you so much, Brian. This was amazing. And I think Brian will hang around here if you want to ask more
Yeah.
questions.
Oh,
Great. So, well, let me turn it over to our last guest here, Tom Funstein. Are you there, Tom? I see him as a presenter.
I see him in the presenter
Yeah,
pod. Do you see him,
we
Rod?
can't see or hear you, Tom. You might have to put on your microphone.
In your
Yeah,
video.
I do see him.
Yeah.
We hear him?
Now, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear
Yeah.
you now.
Hey, Tom.
Absolutely. I don't think they have the video though. I'm not sure. Is that
Up at the top, you should. There's a little video camera icon. You should be able to select that and get your video started.
how's that? How's that?
Not quite there.
There we go.
There
There we are.
Yeah.
All right, welcome.
There's a lot of different platforms for me, so I appreciate it. I appreciate
Yeah,
you guys.
doing great.
So, you want me to
Yeah,
just kick it off?
Tom,
Keep going?
so I mentioned initially here, you've tackled a different use case here initially
Yep.
of recruitment, which in your world of finishing of trade being a trade union, recruitment is kind of your sales organization, right? So that's
Yep.
where the most where the money is in your organization, and then you work your way backwards. We're now working on more training and actually certification focused programs from there. But yeah, do you want to give us the story?
Yeah. Yep. Sure. Well, again, I appreciate Anders asking me to get on here and talk about our experience with the virtual reality, and it's kind of goes back somewhat of a ways, but I'll just give you a little bit of background on us. We are the International Finishing Trades Institute. We are the education department for the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades. So we represent about 140,000 members worldwide, in Canada and in the United States, and we have 11 apprenticeable crafts for 11. So we're the painters union, but we're also the allied trades, right? So one of the things, my role there is various, but the Finishing Trades Institute here in Hanover physical campus, where we bring over 1,000 instructors here every year, and we do the train the trainer models, and then those people subsequently go back and teach the apprentices. We have about 100 schools again across the United States and in Canada. We've been we've been involved with the with learning management system for quite some time, in developing things online, and we started to dabble in this virtual reality as well. I just want to mention two other things with us, which I think makes us a little bit unique, is we are in two worlds, right? So the apprenticeship standards that we of those apprenticeable crafts is Department of Labor world. However, also our instructor training program, and I think 8 or 9 of our councils or our district council training centers are actually accredited by the Department of Education as well, right? So we have this dual. In fact, 2 or 3 of those, I think, actually offer associate degrees as well. So we're in a lot of different things here. But as Anders was saying initially, when we started to get into this, we started it as a marketing piece, really, to recruit, right? Recruiting apprentices, recruiting people into the construction trades, to kind of twofold. One was to obviously expose them to sort of what this may look like. In this case, we have I'll talk about the different ones, but paint. We had industrial paint. We have a glazer, which is a glass worker, and a drywall finisher, to give them a sense of maybe what that might be like, a day in the life, sort of. But it also tried to expose them, right? Almost expose them to some of the things the realities of what that work might be like. And one in particular would be the heights, right off the bat, right? So if you're going to come into the trade and all of a sudden, obviously you can do that, put them on a bridge, or you could put them on a ladder, or put them from a swing stage. But at the same time, you put the goggles on. Some of us get a sense of whether or not we might have that. So that marketing piece was big, but I think, as Anders mentioned, that eventually that lent itself really well into reading more about it and talking more about it. That we're truly trying to get more focused on the training side of things, So that we'll focus on those things. But if you want to maybe click on the, I don't think am I in charge of the slides?
Yeah.
No. So I don't really want to do much on here, obviously, because this is stuff that is the basic here. But I just want to talk about the historical evolution for us. So initially we did this. There were some aerial lift, scissor lift certifications with some of the different third-party folks, and this was it definitely was Oculus based, virtual reality based, but it also had a for a lack of a better term, almost like a bucket, like a Stairmaster bucket, and then that was hooked up to a computer as well, almost like the virtual reality, the virtual like the paint. Right, we did some VR sims and virtual paint and virtual welders and stuff like that. So we did a lot. We've been doing that for quite some time. However, we found out that the software update on that stuff was very expensive over time. So from an international perspective, it was the initial cost. We would take that on, but then when we tried to put that back on our affiliates, it became cost prohibitive from that perspective. So, Anders kind of came in with the right time. I was reading an article on I think on the pilots or something in the Navy and at Christmas, and we're looking for this other cheaper potential cheaper way to do it. And we have found that with the goggles. And then again, obviously the real world application, and again, trying to simulate again what that might be like to recruit. And again, our average age apprentice is 29 years old. So it's not like we're getting these folks out of college, but we do a lot of things with the career fairs. We have a Job Corps program under the Department of Labor as well. So we do job fairs, career fairs, and it's something where we would go out and in the days we'd pad out brochures, right, or show maybe somebody that was maybe younger, and they would obviously talk about what their experience is like as in the construction trades. But this was really a big hit, right? So we would take these to career fairs, maybe trade shows, and we'd show them what this would be like. You can see the doors there, and I think that's the way we had them set up, because I think we have 4. Eventually the goal was to have all these different trades, and which trade do you want to be? You can actually go in to one of the different worlds, for lack of a better term, or if it was specific trade show that we were at, if there was a drywall show or a glass show, we would just have that up on there. So, and obviously lines are out the door for that, to try that. And I think, Anders, you can comment on that, but I think it also captured some information for us as well. So it was capturing whether it was emails or names for us as well, which was really big for us, instead of handing out business cards or something like that. But I believe that was part of the process as
Perhaps
well.
we should take a look, because this is really, I think, visually stunning. Let's start with the video 7 there, glazing, and you can talk to it, Tom. So you're up here. You talk about height. So you're up at the 25th floor there, putting in a oops, let me,
Ceiling. Yep.
right.
Yep. Yeah, so I think, again, what a good approach, again, to show them what it's like to be a glazer. We all want to be, a glazer and get up on a high rise, and all of a sudden, you're at the leading edge there, tied off, hopefully being tied off, but you do get that true sense of what it might be like to be a glazer. And again, we've done this in some cases, where we've done some 3D reality, 360, but you don't really get that really sense here of what it's like. And I believe this does a really good job of replicating what it might be like, not necessarily the physical piece, right, that the strengthening, but the actual job that they have that's involved in bringing up a piece of glass that's been rigged, and then setting it, and then putting in as far as the I think there's if I saw at one point there was a part to seal it as well. So I think this is a great video that portrays that, and you can see this some of the basic functionalities that they would go through, and we also have certifications, third-party certifications that are associated not necessarily with this per se, but setting glass and some of those things that, as far as teaching are concerned, the teaching points are concerned, it's something that our instructors could even use this video. Even if you weren't in the headset, you could use this video as a teaching tool as well. But I think the notion of the heights, and again, if it's something you don't want to find out, once you get them on the job, because again, under our apprenticeship, obviously we have classroom training, but also most of the training they get is on the job. You don't want to find out that first day that they're actually out in that they don't like heights.
Right. And vice versa, right? There are some people who are thrill seekers and really enjoy that aspect of the work. Yeah. And
we also represent the floor cover, so they can be floor covers if they want to be.
yeah.
Excellent.
One thing I wanted to mention about the video, so you saw the floating heads and hands again. Those were real people, but you also saw a full-bodied character there. That's a non-player character. That's a computer-generated helper, and that because one of the challenges here is that this was at least a two-person task. And how do you do that in a self-paced mode when you don't have any other live people there? So you can also, of course, have NPCs, non-player characters, who are AI-driven that you can work with, and still have they feel very lifelike, but by making them full-bodied, that way we're distinguishing them so people don't get fooled.
Yeah, and I will say, again, so that they're showing glazing. I don't know if that was the
We can do,
second
yeah,
one
let's do the next one, 8. That is the painting and drywalling.
So I think drywall might have been the first one
Right, yeah.
we tried with, which was again, these are things that that the apprentice would actually be going through, and when you're looking at, we'll talk about the benefits in a second, but the scripting, I think someone mentioned that before, like this, working with Anders and his team, and our subject matter experts is critical. Is critical because we can show them print materials or show them videos or what they do, but trying to get that to replicate and determine what we believe is the most essential skills. I think that was already brought up, essential skills, and maybe ones that aren't going to maybe change over time. And I think this is a really good example. We got the bazooka gun there and the taping that takes place in the drywall. So even if it's, going through that step-by-step process, I believe that the apprentices, or it could be the journey person for all that, but the apprentice really get a sense of what it would be like to be a taper. And I believe is that with the multiplayer too.
Right. Yeah. Yes. You can collaborate on.
Which, yeah, and again, that's a really good too. Remember, most of our folks, especially our apprentices, they may have little or no construction experience, but just looking for a better opportunity. So all of a sudden, same thing. You're not just throwing some, mud at, by mud, I mean the drywall mud and the tools at them. And this is something they can get in, and you can have the instructor there again, where they can be, going over the process or coaching them, etc. So I think that was something that was that when the subject matter expert, I think it was Simon, I did that one. Mm-hmm. Simon and Dan, they were really into. They really took a lot of time and effort into reading that script, and again, that's not the easiest thing in the world to do, but it's the scripts are detailed from that perspective.
And I think one interesting aspect is you're trying to broaden and diversify your membership base, right? Get more women into the field, right? And what a great way to get a young high school woman to experience what it's like to be out on a construction site and be a painter, for instance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. And I think, I get back to these doors here. Originally, when we started doing this, is, probably more what we were thinking of was almost like a construction site. I think because eventually I think we're going to have this construction site built with this worlds of these construction site, and then the finishing trades, what our job is on that. I think as we're going to continue to, as we can continue to build these out. I think, and at this point, so you saw drywall, like I mentioned, you saw the glazing. I believe we have commercial paint as well with Anders, and we're working right now on industrial paint. Industrial paint being blasting steel, for lack of a better term, blasting steel and then painting it, getting it to a level of clean, and then painting it, which is one of our bread and butter. And that's actually we're working with Anders Group right now on that because it's twofold, and it's certification based, right? It's certification based by AMP, and so it's something that's we really are looking forward to continue working on. But we're going to break it up. There's a case in point where the skill, it was so much from the blast, because a lot of people blast or you spray. Now, most people don't do both. So it was really long. So we've been working on that. But if we go to
I've
the
learned
next,
in the
go ahead.
process that there's a team painting the Golden Gate Bridge all the time. When they're finished, they just start all over.
Yeah.
So that's what we and that program is for certification, which is interesting too, right? Rather than recruitment.
Yep. And again, that's the one that's certified by the AMP, which is it used to be NACE, the corrosion engineers, but that's the worldwide organization that does that. We have a lot of certified folks in that, so that really is beneficial. It's really beneficial again from that road, especially the road, the memory from the blasting in this brain. But if you look at this one, real quick, the benefits, I think that's sort of already been for us though, but enhance the safety training, right? I think it's there's so much things we could go on with that, with the safety training, but from starting out with the proper PPE, from knowing your surroundings, all the things, from being like, even in that virtual world, right? I think that has where you're tied off, making sure that you're tied off, those types of things that maybe they might take for granted over time, but as they continue to learn and it becomes embedded into them, I think the health and the safety piece, it's endless. I think in that you can, and it's really, I believe, and it's really built into all of them, right? That piece initially that is really built in. The cost effectiveness, again, materials, right? You're seeing some materials. You're not going to be able to get everybody up on a field trip to a job high rise, like you just saw there. Sealants are expensive. Glass is expensive. The rigging of the material, the cranes, it's expensive, and that cost is put onto the training fund, and so I think while they still may have those, like you saw them setting the glass, but they can continue. They might have one set of suction cups, like you saw that, or whatever, a glass manipulator. If we continue to do that, so while they're maybe one group is over there working with the instructor or doing the hands-on component, the other students at a relatively low cost can be working on those assignments or working on those exercises as they continue to hone on their skills.
Tom, how well
yeah.
does this transfer? So when you get them on a real site, how well have they learned it? How well does the training transfer to the job?
Yeah, no, I think it like you said, it's as far as the skill is concerned, it's definitely going to reiterate it. It's definitely going to reiterate. We're not going to set anybody out to that job site and put them in that predicament like you saw until they've gone through obviously a classroom instruction, probably this virtual reality, and then maybe maybe one or two stories up, right, off of a scaffold or something before they would get out there and do that. For certain,
Yeah,
but I think it for us it would be more of the the repetition piece, especially when you see in the drywall, or just the awareness piece and the steps, the procedure. A lot of our stuff is procedural based from that perspective.
there's a question in the chat asking if, since you're saying that what you're doing is certified, are you working with a certifying organization to ensure that what they want is the standards that they're putting forth are in your training.
Of course, yeah, we sit on the boards for that one, for the especially for the industrial paint, right? The NACE SSPC joint standard, we help write that, absolutely. NCCO, the Crane Commission as well. So our training would be based on their standard, on
Okay.
their standards. But again, they're not taking this in lieu of the actual hands-on test. This, you start blasting panels. If you see how we do that, we blast panels, and then you strip the panels, and then you put this paint, that epoxy, whatever it is. It's really expensive. It's not like it's not like going to Sherwin-Williams. It's Sherwin-Williams, but it's it might be $300 a gallon. So, and you're trying to get people through our certification process. So this is a really, again, getting back to that cost-effective way. To continue to at least give someone the practice before you would actually get there and do that.
Well, completely the adult education model too, of how many times can you do it, and repetition, and then can you actually apply what you've learned when you need to? Can you retrieve the information from your brain and your muscle memory to do the work? So everything that you're doing completely fits everything we teach in theory of adult education.
Yep. Yes. And again, obviously the accrediting body that we have through the Department of Education is the Council on Occupational Education, which is the one of the 30 of the career and technical ed pieces. So in fact, I believe, Anders, this is what you guys presented at our annual conference, and
Right.
That group was really blown away by it because, again, tight budgets, a lot of, obviously theory, we have theory, classes, in the apprenticeship world, it's 144 hours of classroom instruction a year and 2,000 hours on the job, right? So that's a lot of education materials you have to, even for the classroom. So this is a great way, again, not just from the transference or from the learning and the memory, it's a recruiting piece. It does engage them as well, and it allows them to take that home with them as well, right? Right, they can obviously take the headsets at a relatively low cost, and they could work on those if they want to, at another time. So, what else we got in there?
Yeah. Do you wanna?
This is probably going to be more, Anders. You could
Okay.
maybe
Yeah.
talk more, but yeah,
Okay.
the real world piece, we talked about that.
Your SWOT analysis.
Yeah, I mean, again, we're committed to it. At the International Finishing Trades Institute, we're definitely committed to it. Like I mentioned before, we've done 3 different trades. We represent 11 trades. 5 of are really our core trades. So we're going into our 4th trade now, which was the industrial painter. And again, we think that the challenge is, and I don't even call them a challenge. We are in charge of the instructor training here too. So I think that in moving into 2025, while we mention this in our teaching, we teach teachers teaching techniques, would be to really start continually to monitor this and who's using it, and the tracking pieces that I think have come up before, because I really think, like I said, the opportunity for us to, not just the cost perspective, the recruiting, the cost, and also from maybe could be a way of maybe even retaining some of our apprentices, right? So in other words, they're engaged. It's just not boring when they come into school. I mean, we're always looking for ways, to retain there's a lot of things that go into retention, but this could be another way as well, as far as one of our retention strategies, and making sure our folks stay in our trade, because that's, we lose, just like a lot of, but we lose them probably a little bit. It's hard work, right? It's hard work, but at the same time, it's a rewarding field, and quite frankly, they can make some pretty good money, in the trades that we represent, for certain.
Construction trades in St. Louis, where I am, union members are making anywhere from $80 to $90 an hour.
Yeah. Like if you were to go to our glazers, like in the major cities, or our bridge painters in New York, in these areas, 9 months out of the year they work the one thing, right? Because a lot, depending where they're working, and their wages are very, very good. It's hard work. It's hard work. That's the not what we do is hard work, but the working with the construction trades can be hard work. And again, I think this also, the virtual reality, the reality piece is true too, though, right? You also don't want to. We spend a lot of money, right, on training, and this could even be used at the beginning as well, where you're not flushing them out, but you're not wasting, not wasting paint, but the return on investment is going to be in the headset, as opposed to maybe on a really expensive certification course that they may not take or leave or take with them, or on products and materials, or that I think so. So it could also work in that respect as well. So, I mean, I don't know, Anders.
You already recruited one of our participants here. She wants to switch career, Valerie. Great. Well, yeah. I want to thank you so much, Tom. This has been a great overview of a perspective from a very different type of organization than the others here. Doing really important work in recruiting the next generation of painters using this technology, and upskilling them and certifying them. So, and thank you to all of you for hanging in there. Man, we had almost 100 people here staying for 2 hours. So I just want to remind you, next month here, we'll dive into the development side and get a little more technical, but it's still targeting the instructional designers, decision makers. So there's definitely no prerequisite knowledge needed. It's to really, we're going to bring in our development team, our 3D artists, our programmers, who our game developers and learning designers, who will take you through the process of developing a VR program, but from the explaining it to someone like I think most of you in the audience here who do not come from a technical background. So give you enough of a background so that you can better work with them in developing this. The thing with VR is, unlike e-learning, where you have a lot of easy to use authoring tools now, where an instructional designer themselves can create the whole program, we're not anywhere near that point with VR, and I don't think we're going to be there for maybe forever. This is going to require a team of experts to do the development, and I think it's important for you to understand how to work together with them, and that's what we'll be doing in a month from now. So looking forward to seeing you then, and I want to thank you all for sharing and being so active in chat here. And I also want to plug, we have 2 handouts here, the PowerPoint slides in a PDF format, and a paper that we wrote on that Navy case that I presented. So feel free to download and review that. So back to you, Dr. Lane and Rob.
Okay. Anders, thank you so much. So Brian, Tom, Brian, Anders, we are so appreciative of this excellent workshop. I mean, it was so interesting. I think we all learned so much from it, and I'm really looking forward to part 2, where you do a deeper look into what we need to do for the instructional design and development of VR. We want to thank all of you for joining with us today. Our sponsors, COSO Cloud, Zoom, Moodle, and Learn to Win for working with us in so many ways, and to Adobe for their ongoing support. We hope to see you on February 19th. As Anders said, he'll be back on that day to do part 2 of the workshop. That concludes the workshop.
And we thank you, Carla, as well.
Thank you, Russ. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Rob.
Rob.